In this lesson, I'm going to work on a baby elephant, as you can see here. And once again, I'm going to start off by going to Google and selecting a number of pictures here that I like. And one of the key things you want to look for when you're selecting the subject matter that you're going to work on is, and in the case of a baby elephant, you want to select the age of the baby elephant. These are a little bit different aged pictures of baby elephants. And also we have two species or subspecies of elephant. You have one here which is the African elephant demonstrated with the big ears, and then you have the Indian elephant over here with the small ears. All of these are examples of baby elephants. So in this case, for this lesson, we're going to select an African elephant, which you can see here because you're easily identified mostly because of the big ears. But I'm also going to choose one that's a little bit older, like this age, as opposed to one that's closer to being a newborn, which has much more elongated forms, and they're not quite as aesthetically pleasing as the little baby elephant over here. So as a result, I'm going to focus on one about this age. So let's get started. As we did with the rhino, as you can remember for the other lesson, we're going to start with simple geometric forms. And before I go into that, though, I want to introduce you to some tools and to explain a little bit about how those tools are used. Three of the primary tools that you use to create a sculpture, once you start to get into greater detail, are hoop tools, little wire hoop tools like this one, flat tools like this, and the brush for finishing off, brushing fine detail. The method that we're using to create these sculptures is called subtractive and additive sculpture. So, and I'll repeat before, like I said before, what that means is that we're subtracting clay materials when we need to, and then to adjust if we've removed too much clay, we put it back on. Or if we just need to add clay, that's called the addition or additive phase of that. So let me demonstrate a little bit how these tools are used so you get a full understanding of what I mean by a tool is primarily subtractive or additive in the use for sculpture. Let me move this little elephant, baby elephant, out of the way for a second. And I'm going to bring on a little piece of clay here to demonstrate. So I'm going to take this little piece of clay. Now, the tool, the hoop tool, is used in a subtractive way because if we're trying to create a form and we're not using our hand, we're going to use the hoop tool to remove portions of the clay from the primary sculpture that we're working on. Now, if we need to add to this design, then we take extra clay and we bring it back in and we add it on, and therefore this is a primary additive tool, and the other, the hoop, is a primarily a subtractive tool. Both of these tools can be used in other ways. They can be used for very fine smoothing. The tool can be used just to smooth, like this, the tool that we use for additive. And so can the wire tool also can be used by very, very gently subtracting, almost using it like a brush to smooth off very, very tiny amounts of clay. You can see, and then we can just add them back on and then gently smooth again. And that's how that can be used as a smoothing tool. Now the brush tool, which is the third one, which usually I don't use until the very final stages. And usually it's used with some type of solvent, and the brush tool then is used to go over the surface to eliminate all of those little tiny anomalies which you see that you can't get out with your other tools or with your just brushing your finger over there. So okay, now that I've introduced you to those, let's go back and start working on the baby elephant. The baby elephant is basically created using 10 simple geometric forms that we're going to start out with. One is kind of a pear-shaped. A second one is a smaller kind of pear shape. Third one is a little tiny cylinder. And again, you should be able to recognize right off that 4 cylinders that we have are going to form the legs. And in this case, we have 2 other pieces of clay which are going to be flattened to form ears. And the 10th one is going to be a small piece which we're going to use to create the mouth of the elephant right under here. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to combine these two, which is going to be the small pear shaped object is going to be the head, and like I said, this is going to be the main part of the body. Now, there's 2 ways that I can create the head with the trunk. One is that I can have a separate piece, and then the head suddenly becomes, the small pear becomes more of a sphere once again, and to create the trunk, then I would be rolling out a small elongated cylinder, as we did with creating the tail in the past, but in this case it would be the baby elephant's trunk, and then we can attach it like that. Okay, so, but the other way is that you can, as I first started to show, you can start out with a piece of clay that represents the primary volume of both the head and the trunk. And the pointed end, which is what I call the upper part of the pear shape, what we can do is morph this shape by simply taking our fingers and rolling out the trunk, or the snout if you want to call it that, like that. Starting to look a little more almost like a gourd of some type, but that's the other way. Now the advantage of working and morphing forms, they're still simple forms, geometric forms. The advantage of doing this is that you maintain a level of integrity at the attaching point of where the trunk and the head is. Okay, so that's going to be the first part. And I'm not going to go too far with the trunk other than to get a reasonable proportion to the finished piece that you can see over here. Alright, and now what we're going to do is we're going to attach that to the other part, the main part of the body, the trunk part of the body, meaning the abdomen and thorax. And we're just going to position it like that. Push it on like that, okay, and then we're going to take our fingers, or a finger, and fuse that head into the body like that, all the way around. You want a nice, very nice, structurally strong fuse between the 2 geometric forms. Alright, now we're going to smooth that back a little bit. The elephant has a very short neck, so we don't have to have much of a neck. And blend that nicely together, as you can see, like that. Now, one of the most important things in these early stages is trying to keep a good sense of relationship between these different forms. And why that's important is because a lot of people, a lot of sculptors, make the mistake of not getting these basic geometric forms right in the beginning. And as a result, as they progress to the stage where they're doing the detail work, you'll see some proportions that are not right. And usually the biggest mistake I see is that the head is too big in proportion to the body, or the legs are too big in proportion to the body, or too small. All of those characteristics have to be considered when you're in this very early stage of creating your design. Now that we've fused the head to the body, we're going to take the next step and we're going to fuse the legs, the 4 cylinders which we use for the legs. We're going to fuse them onto the body. And I'm going to put the back legs on first. So again, I'm just going to put these in place and try to establish a good joint between the rear leg and the body. And on the other side, let me go underneath here and fuse that nicely. I want to get a nice bond there, a nice strong bond. Otherwise, while you're working, you'll find that these parts will start to weaken, especially if you start to move them in any different position. They'll tend to have a weakness and break at that point. And what you can see, I'm going to move our little elephant example off here a little bit. What you can see is that I'm positioning them in a very formal way with the other geometric forms that the legs are being attached to. You can see that they're lined up nicely in the back here. One leg isn't attached, and I'll give you an example, isn't attached too far forward or too far back. It's attached at the same point on the opposite side as this other leg is. And I'll just put that and fuse that back into position. Now, in the event that your fingers are too large to get into these little joints, that's where you want to take one of your tools that is generally used for applying clay, and then you can use that to help fuse that clay into place. Like that. But you'll find for the most part that your fingers will work a lot faster than most of your tools will. And that's one of the most important things I have to emphasize all the time, is that use your hands wherever you can, because they'll not only you'll be constantly developing that eye-hand coordination, but you'll actually be moving your sculpture along faster. Now we're going to go to the front legs. Fuse them in place. You want to try to make sure that those legs are like a table. They're all about the same length. In an elephant, that's the case. In other species of animals, like a rabbit, for example, you're going to have different lengths of legs, back legs in relation to front legs. Okay, for the sake of our lesson here, that's about as far as I need to take that, just to show you, to get you started. And once again, you can see that the front legs are lined up nicely together here, and the backs are like that. Okay, and then we're just going to sit them down there. Okay, now you can see that we have the four legs in place. We've got the body shape here, mostly the abdomen and thorax, and the head of the baby elephant, and also the trunk. Next, what I'm going to do is to, before I put on the ears or the tail, these are very delicate little detail parts that you really can be left to the end. What you need to do is move along and get a lot more detail, a lot more of the primary, more important geometric forms. And the way we're going to do that is, and I've made a few examples to give you an idea of what we're doing. And I'm going to bring them up here so that you get an idea. Let me just move this out of the way for a second. One of the things you need to do when you're doing a sculpture, it's helpful to try to identify on the design or on the animal, especially when you're talking about the legs, what are the analogous parts? What are the parts that are the same in this animal's leg that are also the same in your arm or your leg? And I've made up a few little examples here to give you an idea of what that is. When you're looking at the front leg of the elephant, as you can see, it's very similar to the one here. I have it bent a little more just to demonstrate where particular joints are. In the front leg, it's equivalent to our arm. Okay, and I've made a little simple arm here from a human arm. And what you're seeing here is that this little lump here in the front is actually the upper part of the hand or wrist on a person. And the elephant is actually, when it's stepping, is actually on its toes, which would be the equivalent of us being on our fingers, like that. And as a result, this area back here is actually their elbow. And you can see the analogous part would be right here. The same part would be here on our front arm. Okay, so you get an understanding of the way that works. That'll help you to identify, especially on an elephant, an animal like an elephant, where there's so much flesh, muscle, and even fat that it's going to hide where those joints are. Now if we look at the back leg, okay, what you're seeing here, now I have another example here to show you. It's like our leg, and once again the foot is actually up on its toes like that. So the part that you're seeing here is the front part of the elephant's foot. These are the toes, and the back part here is nothing more than a big soft pad to absorb a lot of the shock from the heavy weight of the elephant. And the ankle or heel part of the elephant, or in the person it would be right here, and on the elephant it's going to be right here, on this spot here. And as a result, this part here that bends forward is the knee. Okay, so try to keep that in mind as we're working, and it'll help you to put the build up muscles and things like that that we're going to be adding. It'll help you to put them where they should be. I'm going to just move them out of the way. And now we're going to begin working again on our other piece. I'm going to move him aside. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to start to morph these simple legs that I created. And the way I'm going to do that is start to pinch like this along the bottom to create the pads that you see in the baby elephant. And I'll show you in the picture. You can see how pronounced they are, these little pads, and they vary quite a bit. So you want to study several pictures to get a real sense of what those little feet look like in different positions. When the elephant has its weight on it, the pad tends to be a lot flatter. When they have them up in the air, they're a little bit more rounded, so you want to take notice of that. So I'm going to create those little pads. Just pinch that clay like that to start to create that shape. Now the other thing is we want to do, and I'm not going to do as detailed as on the other elephant here, the example elephant, but the other thing we're going to do is we're going to start building up some of the other forms that you see on the leg of the baby elephant.